Hey everyone, today I'm talking to Thorsten Ball. Thorsten is a software engineer at Zed and also the author of 2 books, Writing an Interpreter in Go and then Writing a Compiler in Go. He is a prolific writer, makes a lot of video content, is very thoughtful about software engineering, and I'm super stoked to talk to him today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat. And so the reason I reached out to you originally is because you have an interesting combination of skills. There are not actually a lot of developers that are well versed in code and can be like really productive software engineers, and then also have the skill of content production. It's like a terrible way to talk about it, but making interesting videos, writing interesting things, teaching things in a way that makes sense to people. Sometimes those things are paired together, but not that often. And so when I see a combination like that, it makes me want to get to know that person.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Did you cultivate this weird pairing of skills, or is this just you were kind of born this way and this is just was always going to happen?
I think in some way I cultivated it in the sense that when I was a teenager, I wanted to become a writer and, a journalist. And when looking into this and trying to figure out how to become a journalist, in Germany, the writing culture is different than in the US, I think, from what I can gather over the last decade of reading about it. And the term writer doesn't exist in Germany. Writer sounds pretty down to earth, right? Like you're a writer and I'm a writer and I write.
This is so ironic because I feel like German is famous for having a term for everything.
Yes, but I think there's not. It's either you're an author, you write novels and this, or you're a journalist. But you can't just say I'm a writer. There's a word for it, of course, but it's not used. And when looking into how to become a journalist, it's either, go to a journalism school, but that's about reporting. That's about, working for AP or in news agencies. That's proper reporting, learning the, skills of the trade. And I think the writing was a secondary thing to that. And then I read that someone was saying, hey, if you want to become a writer, become published in, say, newspapers or magazines or something like that, not novels, you need to consider writing your second skill. What you need to have is domain knowledge. You need to have something that you write about. Because if you're just good at writing, what are you going to write about? And that made sense to me because if you look at, the people who have a column in a newspaper or in a monthly magazine or something like this, they all have something that not, I don't want to say an expert on, but they have something to talk about. So I kind of realized that makes sense. So I need to learn something. And it wasn't that I then went out and said, let's go learn about programming and then write about it. But it was always this, I'm going to read on the side. I'm going to write on the side. I enjoy writing and I always want to get better at it. So it was always this thing on the side that I valued and that I valued getting better at. And then, a detour, I tried to become a musician and then became a programmer. And I think that's one thing, that writing was always this thing on the side that I always deemed important, that I wanted to cultivate. But the other is also, I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in, reading a lot, reading a lot of nonfiction, reading a lot about, I like reading about business, I like reading Jeff Bezos books. I like reading about marketing. And I think, combine all of this, then you end up with some version of me. Somebody's interested in software, somebody's interested in computers, communication, marketing, history, I guess, business, and then,
That's interesting. I think of programming sometimes actually as one of those second skills, kind of like writing, where actually it turns out you can just be a programmer and kind of go work on whatever.
You can, yeah.
But actually, I think maybe better than that is to have a have some expertise or have a passion and add programming to that as a force multiplier.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you like picking up another one of those, like writing, or just like, I almost like the blanket term here is marketing, kind of. 'Cause like I feel like what you're doing is sort of like, it's videos, it's podcasts, it's writing, it's
Yeah.
books, it's quick blog posts, it's tweets. Like you're doing all of these things. So yeah, I think maybe that's the best way to think about it. But having like the cross product of writing and or like marketing and programming and a wide set of interests, like it's
Yeah.
is a heck of a combo.
The funny thing is, I would also say that I'm not really, really good at one of those things. It's more that good at some of those, which then puts me maybe above average. You know, the sum might put me above average. And, you know, I'm now thinking back because I mentioned this when I was a teenager. There was this quote, I'm sure you've heard about this, and I think it even came up in the context of software, but I had this on my website as a teenager for the longest time. This specializing is for insects, you know, this being proud of being a jack of all trades and master of none, I guess. And I can't say that I am super proud and super 100% confident about it. There's obviously moments where I think maybe I should get really good at this one thing, you know. But then over the last few years, I've realized, you know, being a senior engineer / staff engineer, it does pay off to be good technically on the technical level, but also being able to write well or to talk to people or to convince people or to entertain people, you know. And I'm sure you agree with this, right? That engineers have this, what is it, like the trap, the mind trap of thinking the tech is the most important thing, and then when you run a business or an org or whatever it is, you realize no. You know, you're just serving. Engineering is a function of the business, and you're serving the business, and there's more to it than just writing code and pushing a commit.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it'd be interesting to maybe actually talk about the way you came on my radar, which was I saw a video that you published where you were interviewing the founders of Zed, which is your current gig. And you said or wrote something like, you know, you had all these questions and you realized if you're going to ask all these questions of the founders, you should publish this. And I sent this to my friend Adam Wathen, and I was like, this is like what it looks like when a truly awesome person starts at a company. Is they don't just like they think bigger than just like, well, I need to get up to speed. They're like, how do we also make this a valuable thing? And that like, and in particular because like a marketing person probably like might have had that idea, but your average developer got to be like, you know, 1 in 100 at best. And so that really stood out to me. And like we talked about you for a while and A players and all that. And I think that's like that is the sort of thing that sort of shows me like you're a little bit remarkable in this way. Like it's, I guess, and so when you were talking earlier about journalism as a focus, I was like, it feels a little bit like that's like you're kind of doing journalism within the company. It was like sort of like an impulse you had.
Yeah. Well, thanks. You know, thanks for the compliment. I guess just to make clear that I didn't think, look, here's a good piece of content, and I have big dislike for the word content.
I also do, for what's worth.
It's
a convenient shorthand, but I super agree. I feel like it's like
it's when it feels like when somebody goes to Italy to eat pizza and then they say, I want to eat carbs. It's just, no, man, you're eating a pizza in Italy. It's don't, you know. But
yeah.
I what I'm trying to say is I know what Zed, the business, needs. And right now, one of those things is awareness. That's one thing. The other thing is I'm personally really interested in what the founders think. Like, why build a text editor? Why build it this way with these trade-offs? And I also like reading about this type of stuff. I do find it generally interesting in how people think about software and how they develop software. And, you know, one of the most fascinating text files to me on the internet is, you know, Bram Molinar's 7 Habits of Highly, is it efficient text editing or fast text editing? Like, somebody putting a lot of thought and a lot of care into something that seems incredibly mundane to somebody who's not in this. And I guess that makes all of us nerds, but I just get excitement out of it. I enjoy talking about software, reading about software. And then at the same time, when I joined, I also had, I don't know where it came from actually, but I do like reading interviews. I do like, you know, I'm looking at my bookshelf. I've had like a lot of musician interviews and the Rolling Stone book of the interviews, the Rolling Stone interview book, and the Paris Review magazine. And I don't know why I had this in my mind, but I thought that would be a nice art form, you know, to try my hand at this editing of a transcription. So it wasn't even, the video for me was, you know, that was basically side effect. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I interview Nathan, which means I don't have to poke him and go, write a blog post, write a blog post, write a blog post, because I'll write it for him and I get to ask my questions, and then I can have some fun and try and edit this into like a transcript. And then I asked him, and he said, you know what, this is, you know, as chance will have it, tomorrow we scheduled like this founders chat to produce some video content. How about you interview us instead of David? And yes, yeah, sure, we can do that. And I think that was the Friday of my first week. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened right away. That I feel like is part of what makes it so good. And like the fact that you were saying like, I know what the business needs. And
Yeah.
you know that like you're sort of managing up. Like you're like, I don't want to harass this person and have them write a blog post. I can like figure out a way to get it done myself. And I hope everyone is kind of like clocking these things, because like this is just insanely amazing behavior from an employee that just joined a company. Like like you want this from everyone you hire.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you did is it's not like it was super hard necessarily. Like I think basically everybody could do the mechanical steps, maybe not as well, certainly not as well in some regards for sure, but it wasn't like, it didn't require a huge effort or huge talent or anything particularly crazy. It's actually just that you like understood like, oh, one thing the business needs is this. Here's a way to get a like double dip on this thing so we get value from it in multiple ways. Let me just take it upon myself to do this. And like you owned doing it and getting it done. And all of that is like, to me, that's almost like co-founder level contribution. And that's like, it's kind of amazing.
Can we edit that part out and you say it requires huge talent? No, I'm kidding. But I think you say co-founder, but I do think that, let me take a step back. I think in a small startup, you need to have empathy with the person above you, with one level above you. And empathy means thinking about why they hired you and why they would even take the risk of hiring somebody and paying them money, and what do they expect in return. And I think everything else flows from there, in that, say you have a company with 50 people, whatever, and you want to hire, and it's I don't know, a lot of salespeople, you have 10 engineers, marketing, but it's not a lot of engineers, but you would need to scale up engineering. So now you hire a CTO, and you're the CEO. You're busy with sales and marketing. What do you expect of that CTO? You expect of that CTO to take care of the tech for you. You don't want them to come to you every week and say, should we do this? Should we do that? No. You want this, not have to worry about this, to be able to focus on marketing or sales or something else. And that's a high level example. And I think people think that it only happens at this high level. But I do think it happens at, like, to be a good employee, as corny as that might, whatever that sounds, but to be effective or valuable, you need to do this at every level. That means if you hire me to be the front-end engineer and I'm the only one in your company, that means I think how do I take care of the front end stuff for Ben so that he doesn't have to worry about front end? I don't expect him to write tickets for me and spell out what I have to do. I need to anticipate what are the problems, how can we advance this, what do we need to do, what does the business need us to do. So I think it's this, don't wait for somebody to tell you exactly what to do, but try to figure out what is your role and how can you contribute value in your role, and try to make problems not even show up on that other person's radar,
I agree with that as a baseline. Like, it's great to be able to delegate a part of the business to somebody,
Yeah.
and like free yourself up to do other things. Totally agree. But I actually feel like what I'm seeing from you, and the part that impresses me, is that they did not hire you to interview them and make interesting marketing assets. And that is where I feel like that's the special thing I think that happened. And I would say when you hire someone in a startup in particular, there's more room to do that. There isn't a marketing department at Zed, I have to imagine, right? No one was like, oh, sorry, we already have a content calendar and you'll have to slot this in here and make sure you work with this person to get approval for the whatever.
Yeah.
You were just like, you just did it. And so there's room to contribute in ways that are outside your normal job description, which is awesome if you treat that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that is the dream when you hire someone, is like, I think there's almost a little bit of a fallacy in early hiring where it's like, oh, we're hiring you to do this. But in a way, like, we don't really know how you can best contribute. Like, the job description might say this. It could be that like the maximum, like the thing the company ends up needing and the maximum value you're able to provide are totally different than that, and like way outside it. And so you being willing to see that and go at, like, noticing it and going for it is like kind of the startup early employee hiring dream, I think.
Yeah. I think I agree. And that's why I enjoy working in small companies. It's this, you get to do a lot of things, and there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of different work to be done, and you don't have to ask for permission, which then makes stuff a little bit, I don't know, slower, more work. For the interview series, like, nobody reviews my blog post. It's, you run the show. Okay. And I'm like, cool. That also means I have complete creative freedom to do whatever I want. And that's what I enjoy. If somebody tells me, you run this like it's your project. And sure, people also told me this in a larger corporation, but it's a different thing because you then need a lot more people on board with the stuff that you want to do. And the other thing that I always say in startups is, how people, they say, oh, someone should fix ours. Someone should use a different caching thing in our CI. Somebody should, on our team homepage, link to the social profiles, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? There is no someone. There is no person somewhere else. It's most likely you. 99% it's you who should do this. And that sounds scary, and sometimes it fucking sucks because you think, I wish somebody would just do this and I don't have to worry about it. But on the other hand, it's also fun because you realize there's nothing holding you back. Like, if you have an idea for something, you can just go for it. And I don't know, I really enjoy that. I really thrive in that.
Yeah. So you're kind of a dream hire. I'm curious how did Zed hire you? Did you go to them? Did they come to you? Like, how does someone recruit someone like you?
I reached out to Nathan as more like putting my feelers out, but not really, oh, I'm ready to jump ship, but more, how sometimes when what's the Hacker News post, who's hiring or something, you just scroll through and just some mental map of, oh, I didn't know they were remote, or I didn't know that they use Go or whatever. Like, I just find it interesting to keep track of the landscape. And I saw Zed, and I become interested in Zed as the product because I like the focus that they've shown. I like the focus on performance. I like the product itself. And I knew some of the people working there, and I thought they were impressive. And then I sent Nathan a message, and it was literally just one line, and I was like, I'll keep it short. Are you guys hiring? And he said, no, not at the moment. But hey, let's talk anyway. And then we talked, and then we had a nice conversation. And that was just a loose conversation about software and products and whatsoever. And then I guess, I don't know, changed his mind. And then we were like, okay, how about, let's do an interview. And then we did a pretty informal pairing session, me and Antonio. And then they kind of made me an offer, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like interesting nuggets in there. Like, one is, did Nathan know you at all at this point? Did he have any, or was like this?
No,
just
he
a
did.
cold
He
thing?
didn't know me. He
Okay.
then said later in the conversation, he said, "Turns out a lot of people that I know follow you, or something like this,
Yeah.
or they
Yeah,
know
yeah.
you, or yeah."
Yeah. So I think if you have taken the time to create all of these, all this evidence of your competence,
Yeah.
then a one-line email to the founder gets you an interview, even when they're not hiring officially. So
Yeah.
that I think is sort of like takeaway number one, which is like you have put in years of work, not directly to get hired, like for the purpose of getting hired at Zed, but for a lot of different reasons. But those things have then helped you get in the door, like
Yeah.
very easily comparatively. So I think that's interesting. I also think it's interesting that they weren't hiring officially, but it's like, 'cause I feel like the secret or like the reality is like everyone is always hiring, particularly startups, if you can just show that you're going to bring a ton of value. So like officially we're not hiring, but when Thorsten reaches out and you look at his profile and you see what he's done, you say, oh, it's very easy to tell like how you're going to generate more value than the salary. And
Yeah.
and maybe also we don't strictly have an opening, meaning like we're not like, oh my God, we're really missing a front-end engineer or whatever you're ostensibly going to do. But when you see the multifaceted nature of this person, you think they're going to figure out a way to provide a lot of value here. And some of it will be through code and some of it will be through other things. And that changes the like, we're not hiring to like, no, we have to hire this person actually.
Yeah. I mean, hiring, I've been on the other side a few times, and I can't speak to being the hiring manager at the small startup, but I think just to talk about the same 2 points that you just made from I guess a different perspective. And the first one, what did you say? Evidence? You said evidence of
competence. Yeah.
yeah. That's what I often try to tell people when they ask me, how can I get a job like this, or how can I do this or that? It's put yourself out there, like leave traces, like leave breadcrumbs. Somebody sent me an email 2 weeks ago asking, hey, I'm a web engineer or work on web applications, but I want to be more like a systems programmer. How do I do that? And I said, look, man, like I started doing websites and now work on a text editor in Rust. And it's not like I took a course and then applied to a systems programmer thing, but it was, I got into compilers, interpreters, operating systems. I wrote these 2 books, and it's just evidence. Like that evidence, I'm going to get to this, that evidence is now out in the world. There's blog posts, there's newsletters, there's books, whatever. And then when somebody looks at you and they think about whether they want to hire you, what goes through their mind is, when I hire this person, how will they function in this company? Can they be productive? Do I need to teach them stuff? What do they, can they provide value here? And your job as an employee or as somebody who applies is to convince the other person that you provide more value than you cost in that interview loop, right? And if there's already evidence that you can provide value or that you have knowledge, you can skip the line, because you don't have to answer all of these questions, because look, like there's 50 blog posts that you wrote about whatever. Why would I ask you this in the interview? So this, leave evidence, leave breadcrumbs, leave proof that you know something about something. And that goes a long way, because for most people, there's no proof whatsoever. You have to pull it out of them. And even then, in interviews, most people are really bad at getting in the mindset of, this is my chance to convince the other person that I know something. They expect to answer questions correctly, but it's a pitch. You need to pitch to the other person, I can do something. And yeah, I think that's the one thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and when people, like you should be able to drop a small handful of links to that each of which is a piece of evidence. And if like when people say like, oh, all my code is in private repos that I worked on that's proprietary, it's like, yeah, okay, well that sucks. You should fix that. Like you should do something else then, because like you will compete against people that don't have that situation. If you can't send a handful of links to things you've made that show you know what you're doing, you are at a massive disadvantage. And if you can do that, you will be in the top 10% automatically.
Yeah.
And then and your interview, you said, was like a casual pair programming thing. They weren't really, and I imagine he wasn't even thinking like, I need to confirm that this person can program well and understands programming languages and will be a productive engineer. It was probably more about like, see how you think a little bit, make sure you're kind of fun to work with, check the vibes, get the sign off from the second co-founder, or whoever that is.
Do I want to spend time with this person?
Yes. It was probably mostly actually like behavioral or like, about your personality, I would imagine, because you can point to the books you wrote on these topics. And now that's an extreme example. Like, I don't think I would say like everyone should write a book on compilers to show they know what they're doing, but something along those lines that just makes it so that the interviews become more of a vibe check than a skill assessment.
And I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think
that's okay. Let's go there. Let's ride it.
Interviews should be unbiased. They should be, like they should be objective and all of that. But they are biased. That's just a fact. Impressions count, as people. They are influenced by how well your CV is written or how well your cover letter is written. And there's no way around this. There's no way around the fact that somebody takes in everything they can get from your site and form an impression of you. That's just how the world works. And I think engineers sometimes think that, well, that's all superficial. What really counts is that I give the correct answers to the specific questions they are going to ask me in an interview. But the reality is that if you are presented with two resumes and one contains, here's a link to my GitHub, here's my 5 blog posts, here's this that I did, I organized this conference, and the other person is spent the last 8 years working at this company and there's nothing to show for it, guess who gets more clicks on their resume? Who gets more impressions in their,
Yeah. I wouldn't even call that biased, though. That just seems like very reasonable decision making, right?
Sure, but I guess the counterpoint would be that somebody would say, oh, are they really that superficial that they judge a resume by how, which fonts they use? And the answer is, obviously, like everybody does. Like if yours is shittily formatted, sure, we should ignore it, but it leaves an impression,
It's funny that you're talking about resumes here, because I'm sure you did not send one over.
No, I didn't send one, no.
Yeah. I wrote a blog post a long time ago called Programmer Resumes Are Deprecated.
Yeah.
And it's like, why would you use a resume when we work in an industry where you can just show what you can do?
Yeah.
It's like there's like, I feel like it's almost like no other field. Like a surgeon would probably have a hard time like showing like, look, I do good surgery. But a programmer can so easily be like, here is some code I wrote. Here you go.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah.
And so why would you not use that superpower that we have, that amazing ability to demonstrate competence and reduce the risk of hiring you right off the bat and turn your interview into a more, casual chat? Like that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had a resume in 15 years or something. Like my resume is like, look at my Twitter. Like look at this company I made. Look at these talks I gave over here. Read these blog posts and see that I write well. Like it's that's the resume now.
Yeah. I think well, I wish it would always work like this. I do have to say that a couple years back, I was interviewed at multiple companies. Like this was in 2018, 19, before I joined Sourcecraft. And I already had 2 books, and I still had to do coding exercises, you know? And then you get kind of, you know, pissed off because you're thinking, look, like there's so much code and stuff that I've written about code out there, but
Yeah.
I get it in that you have maybe 20 applicants, whatever. Are you going to go through all of them? It's tough. But this was also 6 years ago. I was in a pairings interview thing, and the other guy was like, yeah, I read your book. I know that you can program. So do you have any questions you want to ask me? And we just, had a chat.
Did you end up working at any of the companies that forced you to go through like a coding exercise interview?
Yeah, one of them. And then I quit after 3 months, yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like that? Yeah. Because to me, that's a red flag. Like I would consider that like not a deal breaker, but I'm like, I'm starting off not that impressed.
Yes. When I was hired at Sourcecraft, I also sent back, look, here's my books if you want a code sample. And I sent them the PDF, and Nick, back then our head of engineering, I think he took it, he has a good sense of humor, and he was like, yeah, but let's do the live pairing thing, just to what you said, like find out what is this person, what is this person like? What's it like working with them? And I chose you could do the take home thing and, do like the 3 hours, or do the live thing. And I chose the live version because then I can explain myself, and I can also talk to them and, have some fun and whatnot. And yeah, but then I worked, 4.5 years at Sourcecraft. Everything is open source. You can look at my GitHub, like the last 4.5 years, all of my tickets, all of my pull requests, everything is there. You can see what I did. Like that's, a million times more you can get out of any interview, basically. And I think I've had still recruiters reach out to me, and they were like, yeah, so we need if you want to go to the next stage, we need like a pairing exercise or something like that. And that kind of made me that was a red flag. One of them was this was a once in a lifetime chance. I didn't even want to leave Sourcecraft, but it was a chance to work on a compiler somewhere. And I was like, I gotta listen to, like, I just want to listen and have a conversation. But then they were like, yep, you're gonna have 6 interviews. Here's a code check. Here's the code pairing and take home exercise. And then I was like, I just sent you the source code of an optimizing compiler I wrote in Rust over the last 3 years. There's books that I wrote about compilers. What are we doing? And I didn't proceed for multiple reasons, and one of them was that it left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah. I that sounds like a bad hiring process. I feel like if you want, like particularly if you want to hire superstars, and you do, you need to flex the normal process. Like you need to realize when you're dealing with someone that is clearly competent and doesn't need to do the normal checks. And if you are a slave to process and won't do that, you're probably a slave to process in a bunch of other ways that like will hurt the company, and you're not a great organization.
How do you filter out? Okay, maybe that's already included in your point here, but I think I've hired people or gave a strong yes in interviews, for people that then turn out they can do something, they can ship. They look amazing on paper, and they wrote papers or gave talks or something like this. And then it turns out they just can't function in, Did you ever run into this?
It's not ringing a bell. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, my reaction to this is that like no hiring process is foolproof. You will always make mistakes. I think if you are hiring people who have artifacts that prove their competence to at least some extent, you will make this more likely to succeed. But you probably will still make some errors where it seemed like they were great and it turned out they weren't for some reason that was you didn't quite anticipate or didn't quite uncover. And I would sort of push towards a process that when you feel like you've got someone amazing on your hands, you bias towards getting them in the door rather than trying to avoid ever accidentally hiring someone who seems great, not on paper, but like with some sort of evidence at least, like not like a strong resume, but like, some strong indication of performance. Let that mistake happen sometimes and just correct it.
Yeah, I guess now thinking about it, I think if you were looking for evidence, I think you would also look for evidence of ability to ship or get something done, right?
For sure. Yeah, and that's why there should be links. Like,
right.
I think links are kind of important. It's not like, oh, I'm going to describe this time I built a recommendation engine. It's like, no, show me a link to something.
Yeah, give me the link. Yeah,
the link makes it way more real. It's like it has to have like actually shipped. It has to be public. It has to be a URL addressable thing that you put in the world. Then it is like so much more likely to be an actual legit real thing.
What do you say to people who say that's unfair? That's extra work. I'm already working.
You're right.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. If you want the best jobs, it's not about fairness here. Like, I'm not trying to like give an equal opportunity to every person that might be a candidate. I'm trying to find the very best people out there. Yeah. And the very best people generate things that make it clear they are competent.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
This is not to say that there are not great people that don't do this. Like, I worked with a programmer in the past who's by far the best person I've ever worked with. He's like incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to code. He has no social media presence whatsoever. He does do most of his work in private. He is sort of hard to find, hard to assess that way.
Yeah.
If you paired with him, you become very clear very fast. And actually, you know what? He does write some blog posts and has given a couple talks, so it's not nothing. But he's not like a he's not like you. It's not like the most obvious thing. And there probably are some total superstars who have almost no footprint. But I would argue that's a weakness in their like ability to get hired. And it's unfortunate. I would love to also find those people, but it's just way harder. And it's much more likely you will sort of weed them out.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's not a flawless process, but there is no flawless process. There is no perfect hiring approach here.
Yeah, and I like what you said. It's this, if you want to work for these companies with these people, then that's the game you have to play. If you don't want to play that game, there's other jobs, then go to Microsoft. I don't know,
sure,
whatever, ding
yes.
Microsoft. But it's, if you can't expect to work at, say, imagine the top 0.1% coolest software companies. Say hottest company right now, OpenAI, right? Sam Altman, didn't he tweet, if we're hiring, what we need is proof of exceptional ability. That's what he put in. And then people go, oh, what does he mean? That's unfair. But no, they can pick. They can pick whoever they want to hire. And if you stand out, that's the way it is. And I think this is similar to in a corporation when people say, oh, to get promoted, you have to be good at promoting yourself. And my reaction is always, yeah, no shit, dude. Like, what do you think? How do you think this works? That you can sit in your office and just silently work without ever telling anybody, and then somebody will knock at your door and go, "Hey, we've been watching. You're amazing. We've been tracing your commits, man. You're amazing. You're hired. You're promoted." That's not how this works. Yeah. And I told a friend of mine who completely different industry, but he's saying he's managing an engineer, and that one engineer. He has two engineers, one engineer, average, one exceptionally good, average person, talks to people, everybody knows what they're doing. They're always the person being invited to meetings whatsoever. The other person, technically much better, feels like left behind because they don't do a lot of self-promotion. And I told him, man, you need to get real with him and tell him that's how the world works, Like, you can't stand in the corner and say, oh, the girls all go to the boys who are attractive and dare to talk to them. That's how it is, you know. That's just how the game is played, and there's nothing you can do about it except maybe find your own way to play the game. But you cannot change this. You cannot change the game.
Yeah, marketing matters. It's like
Yeah.
just more marketing to me. It's like marketing
Yeah.
yourself within the organization is totally a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's like you could get mad about it, or you could accept it and like try to rectify,
Yeah.
or like just deal with the situation and act accordingly. And I think that's the way to go most
Yeah.
of the time. Or maybe start your own company, or like advocate for some sort of different assessment process, or do something, but don't just be mad.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, I guess, people see marketing, or I don't know, self-promotion, whatever. They see it as this icky thing. And I don't. I think, let's talk about self-promotion in a big company. People sometimes ship stuff, they don't ever tell somebody about it. I always like to record demos, and I always like to record or produce little write-ups and have nice pull request messages and make things look good and that type of thing. And it's not just for show, it's also because it helps me. You know how many bugs I found while recording a demo and having to redo something? Or how many times when I tried to write a clear pull request message of what something is, I noticed, oh, I left out an edge case. Oh, actually this doesn't do this whole thing. So, writing about something or producing content about something is also a way to reflect about something. And ultimately, I think that also is a way to make the work better. So it's not just yucky. Nobody's talking about lying, right? And nobody's talking about exaggerating. I'm talking about just presenting what you did in a good way. And I think there's benefits to it.
Yeah, and recognizing that like the system is noisy. I like those two things you said. Those seem like actually great benefits, totally. But also just sort of understanding that in a company there's a lot going on, and people are unlikely to have a perfect perspective on like what you're doing and how good it is and how much thought you're putting into it. But if you're sort of like, if breadcrumbs are appearing all the time, that just helps. It helps people sort of understand the reality of what's going on.
Yeah. Or the other thing, I'm sure you know this as a founder. People often think, yeah, I said it once. Right? I said it once. And then, no, that's not how this works. It scrolls past in Slack. People forget about it. There's rarely a moment where somebody goes, oh my God, it's Thorsten again with his fucking feature. Didn't he say this twice already? That never happened, Like, maybe, but maybe once. I don't know. But I would rather err on the side of saying it once or twice too many times versus just one line, yeah, I shipped this amazing feature, and then it gets lost in the noise. And yeah.
Yeah. Have I been mispronouncing your name this whole time? It's Thorsten, not Thorsten.
I mean, one is the English pronunciation and the other is the German one. I don't.
All right, I'm gonna start doing German though.
I was in Australia for a year and they couldn't pronounce it. They just, it ended up being Justin. I said Thorsten and they were like, Justin?
And you were like,
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
And yeah.
Well, sorry I didn't ask before I introed you.
No. Thorsten's fine.
Put that on
the way I explain it is Thor and then 10. Thor's 10.
Thor's 10,
whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. I added to my checklist for future guests. So
check the pronunciation.
Confirm the pronunciation before we start.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I will have eventually made all of the stupid mistakes in the podcast, and I'll make it interesting, advanced mistakes instead. Let's talk about Zed a little bit.
Yes.
Why make an editor?
Why make an editor?
Why Zed? What is Zed's? What's in the DNA over there, and the brains of the founders, where they're like, we have to make a new editor. We got to start from scratch because nothing out there does what.
So the 3 founders of Zed, they all worked on Atom, which was this editor they built at GitHub. And Nathan, the CEO and one of the founders, he's been building text editors since he came out of college. That was, the thing that he wants to build. And his dream, as far as I understand it, is and has always been to build the best possible text editor. And then he was hired at GitHub, and they built it. They built Atom, and Atom had, I say it Atom, by the way, I say it Atom, but they always say Atom. And then in the transcripts, it shows up as Adam. So I'm now super tripping up at how to pronounce it, but you know what I mean. And so they built this editor. They also built Electron, right? As part of this. So these are three people who left their mark already on technology in some sense. And at GitHub, I think basically they at some point pulled the rug under the project. I think, they don't want to fund it anymore, put resources on it. And along the same time, VS Code came along. And then I think they all went kind of separate ways for a short while, but they all closely stayed in touch. And I think, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, they decided, no, we have to do this. There's VS Code, that's not the best thing we can have. There has to be a better version of this. And so they set out to build the best possible text editor they can build. And I mean, I'm sure you get this, right? There's some people online or wherever they go, hasn't this all been invented? Hasn't this all been done before? Why another text editor? And I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but my answer is sure. But if people were to think like this, then we wouldn't have a lot of amazing technology, right? It's been done before. Somebody did it before. We wouldn't have Vim because somebody would have said, why improve it? VI improved. There's already VI. We don't have to do anything. So they said, we're going to build the best damn text editor. And the focus is, there's a lot of lessons learned in that, I think. And that is, with Atom, they went with Electron, web technology, JavaScript, and they kind of backed themselves into a corner where performance just did not go where they wanted it to go. And there were limits to what you can do with JavaScript on one side and then Electron C++ on the other side. And you want plugins too. And, you have a garbage collected language here, you have C++ over there. If we want to make something faster, then we kind of have to convert this part into this. So there were a lot of technological choices that resulted in this feeling of, we can't go further than this. This is holding us back. And then, I'm piecing this together only from talking to them in the last few weeks, right? It might be wrong here, but from what I understand, they then built collaboration into Atom, meaning that you can have multiple cursors in the same text editor and edit the same text file. But they also bumped into limits there because that had to be an extension too, in Atom. And you don't have access to the core thing, and the data structures weren't there. And you basically, I think Antonio explained it by saying, you had your text buffer in Atom, and then you wanted to build the CRDT version of that to enable collaboration, which means you had to juggle two of those because it wasn't built into this. So when they then set out to build Z, they said, okay, focus performance, focus collaboration from the ground up. And that gives us technological choices. Rust, right? We're going to use the GPU. We're going to build a GPU accelerated text editor. We're going to use TreeSitter, which is this parsing library that Max built, also one of the co-founders, a parser generator toolkit that allows you to, I'm going to use the wrong words here, but I can't even come up with the wrong words. But the parsers generated by TreeSitter, they're really fast, but they also are made for text editors, meaning They can do incremental parsing or partial parsing, so that if you have a file where you're typing, meaning you delete stuff and then you have invalid syntax in the middle, what TreeStudio can do is it can parse the top half, go to your cursor, realize there's something off here, then parse the rest, and you can still get syntax highlighting. So ages ago, parsers couldn't do this. You would lose the syntax highlighting below the stuff you were editing, or lose it completely, or everything was gone. So that was another thing in the toolbox, right? So Tree-Sitter, Rust, focus on performance, focus on collaboration, and then they set out to build it, and here we are.
Cool. Yeah. I'm curious about where we are in terms of like the journey of this product. Like, seems like it's very early days. Probably not a ton of users yet, but maybe still like can people just use it, or is there a wait list for it?
No, it's open source. You can download it. It's still in beta, but you can download it. We went open source a week after I joined, basically. And
Right.
after that, they say correlation is not causation, but a week after I joined, the numbers went up. But,
Hey.
26,000 stars on GitHub or something. Like, it
Nice.
blew up on Hacker News.
That's very cool. I admire the collaboration stuff. Looks interesting to me as someone that makes a developer
Yeah.
collaboration tool. I keep an eye on what's going on in the world, and it's interesting. Like there's like sort of it almost looks like the Slack sidebar kind of, where there's different channels.
Yeah.
Except the channels seem to be like work channels. It's almost like I'm over here on the whatever project.
Yeah.
And I can see like, oh, Thorsten's in that channel, which
Yes.
means he's working on the
Vim
whatever it
mode
is
or whatever.
Yeah, Vim mode, exactly. And I can hop in there and now we can talk.
Yeah.
But I also like I can follow your cursor or something, I assume. It's
Yes,
like,
and you can also edit with me. Like we can pair in that everybody who joins has their own cursor. I can follow you around, you can follow me around, or you can edit the thing that I'm editing. We can talk. We have audio calls. I can screen share, so if I command tab out of that, you will then see my screen, like the terminal. If I command back in, you see my normal cursor. So yes, collaboration fully built in. The left side bar, where you have your project panel with the files, you can toggle this, and then you see collaboration and the channels. And yeah, I wrote a newsletter post about this, about how different it feels to work at Zed, because Zed is developed in Zed and we don't use any other tool to collaborate. So that means we have Slack, right? We have Slack, but Slack is pretty quiet. And give you an example from yesterday. So this week we had quality week, meaning we just focus on bugs. Funnily enough, for quality week, focus on quantity over quality, meaning let's get as many little things fixed as possible, right? And I set up a Calendly link, and I tweeted out, hey, I'm doing office hours, quality week, hop on, like send me a thing and then we pair in Zed on Zed, fixing bugs, bring your own bug ticket or we pair together on something else. And I have to say this, I'm shamelessly copying the Calendly link from colleagues, Michaela and Conrad, they've been posting them in GitHub issues and saying, let's work together on this, here's my Calendly link. But I've been tweeting this out and immediately got 5 people on my calendar. And yesterday, maybe it was the day before, I think it was Wednesday. But yeah, Wednesday, 3:00, I'm waiting in the Zed channel for this person to show up, Ricard, who said he wants to pair with me. And he shows up and we pair on, I don't know what it was. We look at a GitHub issue, we realize it's harder than this. We look at something else. Let's try this. And he's been watching me. I see his cursor move around. I see him getting more comfortable with how this stuff works. And then we get stuck on somebody else joins and just watches, like somebody from open source community. And there's a chat too, so I think they said hello. But it was just two of us. And then a 4th person joins who's also just an open source contributor, and he starts talking with us, and then we bump into this type error in Rust. And then it was the 3 of us for 45 minutes trying to fix this type error. It's just like, try this, let's turn this around. And then somebody else, no, what about this? Let's comment this out. And then we would all you could see how the cursors would all end up in the same file again. And then they would kind of disperse because everybody would go and find different files in the project to see how other files do it. So then I was like, we're getting nowhere. So I left an emergency call in Slack and I said, can somebody hop in the Z channel because I need help with async Rust. So Conrad comes in. Just, I didn't know that but he just popped in, hello, okay, let me try to help you. So he's trying. He also doesn't figure it out. But the bat signal was still shining in Slack. So Michaela then comes in like 20 minutes later and she's like, what are you doing? So it was 5 or 6 people in this. And she's like, okay, I can figure this. Here's what we can try. And she figures it out in 20 minutes. And she's like, all right, I'll see you. Bye-bye. And hops off. I got another call, hops off. And then Conrad was like, yeah, I got to work on this other thing. All right, Ricard and I are at it again. Okay, now we're unblocked by this. Let's continue with this. 20 minutes later, Michaela pops in again. So you figured it out. I'm done with the other meeting. You still need help or are you good? No, we're good. All right, bye. She hops off again. At this point, it was Ricard and me just sitting in front of our computers for 3 hours, just hacking on this. And then we opened a PR, and I realized, I was just sitting here, and people just came in and hopped off, and all unscheduled, basically. And funnily enough, when I joined Zed, I was shocked that there were no video calls. But now I think there's something really magical about just audio calls, right? And just being able to sit there and just talk to somebody and you shut up and you don't have to think about what your face looks like when you just focus on the code and then you talk. And I don't know. So that was it was an above average afternoon, but it wasn't out of the norm. You're working on something, you're hanging out in channel, somebody drops in, drops out again, somebody helps you. And that's what this is about, yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, the no webcams thing I think is actually interesting. So tuple calls are the same way. Like by default, they start off with audio only. And in fact, something like 85% of our calls are audio only, no webcam. And I think that's great. Yeah. It's actually it's really fatiguing to have cameras on a lot. And it locks you in place. Like I love to stand up and walk around. Like my back hurts right now because we've been sitting here for an hour.
Yeah.
And I would love to get up and stretch and look out the window and grab a drink and continue talking to you the whole time. But with the camera, that makes it more awkward. I don't feel as free to kind of stroll around and take care of myself.
Which is weird, no? Because I've been working remotely for 5 years now, and 4.5 of those were video calls, a lot of video calls. And I was a big fan of, I always thought it's an anti-pattern when you have a company call and everybody has their camera off. And I think I still think it's an anti-pattern. If somebody has the camera on and everybody else has them off. I loved it at Sourcegraph when there was a company meeting and there were 70 people with their cameras on and you could see what everybody's doing and who moved apartments and whatnot. That was really cool. And I always thought this is a fundamental requirement to working remotely, seeing the other people. So then I joined Zed and I said, third day, I was like, I didn't see anybody. I just talked to people. And then I sent Michaela a message, hey, can we do a meeting, but also with cameras? Oh, yeah, sure. And then we did this. And then I did the same with Conrad, I think. Can we do it with camera? And he laughed and he said, oh, yeah, that's also what I asked about when I first joined, but I don't mind it now. And I thought he was crazy. I sent 2 friends, I sent messages like, they don't use cameras here, that's crazy. And then I started to get used to it. And then this morning I had a call and the camera on. It was so, oh my God, come on, what is this? And there's a special intimacy to just voice only.
Yeah. It shouldn't be though, right? That's so weird.
It is.
Right? We have so much circuitry for reading faces, right? So it shouldn't feel totally disconnecting and off-putting to not be able to do that, I think.
I told Nathan and the others, I said, I'm not sure I want video in Zed. I think there's something magical about only voice. And it reminds me of being a teenager and being on the phone with my friend for 4 hours. And just just talking and playing. What we did actually back then was on a phone call, and then we played Quake 3 online, before
Nice.
TeamSpeak,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
on the phone. And
Yeah.
there's also something that somebody once posted on Hacker News that I constantly think of. They said the latency was better with analog lines. The latency was, it actually
Interesting.
is faster than the speed of sound. So if you were on the phone to somebody, it feels like they're really close to your ear, versus if you're in the room, you perceive them as being, at a distance to you. And so there's some special intimacy that it really does feel like they're next to your ear. And there's it's immediate, blah, blah, blah latency. So there's something special about this. And also, that obviously is not the case right now with, digital calls over the internet. But all of that is to say, being on the phone for hours is not as draining as being on a Zoom call for hours.
Right. I think that's the I think that's the key thing here actually. Is like if you're doing a one-on-one and I'm trying really hard to kind of read your mood and see how you're actually feeling, like maybe I want to see your face and your affect. Like, are you sleeping? How's your outfit? Do you look like you're like taking care of yourself? Like I can read some extra clues if I can see you.
Yeah.
But if you and I are staring at code and we want to be able to do it for hours on end and stay in the zone and stay focused, maybe seeing your face actually just makes that worse and harder, more fatiguing.
Yeah.
I kind of fought webcams for a while, like adding them to Tuple, because we added them at one point. For a period of time we didn't have them, and of course, and like people requested them a lot, and so we eventually added them. But then I fought for a long time to hide the self view. Like I gave people a way to like briefly check what they looked like, but then like made it hide automatically, and people like I think for like a whole year I kind of fought like, no, like trust me, you don't want to see yourself like this, like you don't.
Why do you think that I've never gotten on that train, the hide self view?
My argument is it's nearly impossible not to stare at yourself and not actually pay attention. Like I think our brains are just like not like, imagine trying to talk to a friend and like there's a mirror pointed at you right next to them. Like how's that going to go? It's going to go worse. It's going to be worse than if you just can't see yourself.
Or when they have mirrored sunglasses. And you're like,
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, terrible. Yeah, so we're not like, I think our brains don't want this, and people think they want it because they have anxiety about what about my background? What if my hair is weird? What if blah blah blah? What if I forget I have my webcam on? And my answer is like it was for a long time, which is like, no, you trust me. You think these things are all true? You don't want this. Eventually, I caved. Like when hundreds of your users ask for this thing, it's kind of like, all right, fine. I guess I will build this for you against my preferences. But yeah, to me that's actually the worst of. Now you're all the way down the bad, affordances for collaboration. Not only do you have video going on the whole time and all that costs you, but you also have your own stupid face on it, and you're just staring at yourself and checking yourself out. And
the funny thing is, though, I once did a podcast recording without video, and that just completely tripped me up. And I think that was because the other person, the host, it was a pretty short format podcast. And I think what they were trying to do was ask something, let the other person talk, and then ask something. But what I want to find out, is it resonating, this conversation? Like, are you also smiling, having fun? But if the other person tries their best to stay quiet and I can't see them, it just feels really weird, Yeah.
Yep. That makes sense. Yeah, I think being able to nod at someone as they're talking to encourage them to keep going and sort of say like, yep, that's it, is really useful. Like, but that's like a conversation. Like the thing you're doing is you're making conversation, right? Like the thing we're building together right now is a podcast episode. It is not code. We're not both looking at something else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching TV, but
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. I'm staring out the window with the squirrels occasionally.
Yeah. Did you try the Vim mode yet?
No, not yet. I need to. I actually haven't tried the editor.
Okay.
So, but I'm interested. I'll give it a shot. I'm pretty hardcore Vim person, so we'll have to see like if you've got the chunks of Vim mode that make me, like Vim.
Same, but I did I'm keeping notes now because we do have Vim mode, and I learn a lot of things about Vim that I never thought existed. Where people ask, why don't you do this? And you realize, I didn't know that's a thing. Today I
Yeah.
learned, you can, in Vim, you can press I to insert mode, obviously, or you can press A to append after the current thing. I didn't know that those take account. So you can say 5A, insert something, hit escape, and then it inserts it 5 times. I didn't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Or I don't know if this is how you pronounce his name, Scott Chacon, the co-founder of
Oh,
GitHub.
Chacon. Yeah.
Yeah, Chacon.
I think
He opened a ticket to ask for R mode, the replacement mode, capital R in the Vim mode, which writes over the things. And he says, I use this a lot. And I go, I've never once used this in over 10 years of Vim. And he's like, I use this every day, multiple times. I need this.
This is yes. So one of the best engineers I worked with said the problem with Vim modes in every other editor is that they think, oh, we'll just implement the 20% of Vim that everybody uses. But it turns out everybody uses a different 20%.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So you're kind of signing up for implementing more like 80% of Vim.
Yes, and there's the interesting thing now that people come to Z from VS Code, for example, and then they expect that the Vim mode in Z works like the Vim mode in VS Code, which is not.
No.
There's like it's like a Frankenstein kind of thing where they say,
oh God,
they expect the interaction between the non-Vim parts, where you hit, say, Command F to search, to work a certain way with the Vim stuff, which is hitting / to search for something.
Yeah.
And I was in that ticket going, why do you that's a you search with /, and they go, yeah, I don't use /. And I go, what are we talking about here? Oh yeah, I come from VS Code. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Oh man, that's tough.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say. I would say don't offer to implement Vim mode and be surprised. Like, know what you're signing up for, which is
it's hard. Yeah.
Probably a lot of pain. But yeah, as a Vim user, I appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't used the editor. I haven't been writing any code. I haven't written code in a long time. So, but one of these days, I'm gonna have to pull do a new coding project, and I'll give it a shot.
Nice. Let me know what you think. That would be interesting.
Totally. Yeah, I'd be happy to give you some feedback. Maybe we would pair on something, and so I can give it to you live.
Nice. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Adding your favorite obscure Vim thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
That'll be the motivation. I'll find something like, wait a minute. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to call Thorsten.
The other thing was here, capital U. I'm just looking at my notes. Undo all latest changes on one line. I didn't know that's a thing.
It's a really nice one. Yeah.
Didn't even touch macros yet, or registers, or all of that other stuff.
It is a deep hole. It is a huge editor.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And once you get used to how quickly you can do things when you know all the pieces, to not have that there is like, it's like this interrupt. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, there's really subtle things. I fixed a lot of things, or asked Conrad to fix them for me when I came on, because, I've been using Vim a long time, but there's little things. I wouldn't even call them features, but it's just, say you do a visual selection in Vim, and then you hit / to search, and that carries the selection with it, right? So you can select multiple things. And then you go in insert mode or whatever. The state of that selection, and when it appears and when it disappears, and which key you hit, that's not something you consciously think about when you use it. But then in Z, there was this thing where you would do a selection, and then you change something and you undo it, it restores the selection, because selections work differently in Z. So they're part of the undo stack. So you can select stuff and then unselect stuff. And that just tripped me up, because it was this little thing that I'd never thought about.
Right.
Yeah, and I was off.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I wish you luck. That's a hell of a yak to shave amongst a whole field of yaks.
Yeah, we can already see the skin through of the yak, so it's all
nice. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, man. This was great chatting. I appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you for having me, man. This was great.
Yeah. So try out Zed, buy Thorsten's books, follow him on Twitter, do all the
Subscribe to my
things.
newsletter,
Oh
buy
yeah,
my
yeah,
t-shirts.
yeah, totally. By the way, I just last thing, your pitch for Register Spill, which is you have a blog already, and then you made this other thing, and you said it's thoughts I can't keep in my head. I set the timer to 60 minutes, start writing, and hit send. Not a lot of editing, just off the cuff. It's what I'd reply to you with if you'd ask me what's on my mind this week. What a pitch! That is
Yeah.
just a great product. I love it.
Thank you. It's I have to admit it's started to morph into more than that, in that when I don't know. We're over time. I don't know. But if you got a couple minutes, I'll just one thought on this. That
Yeah,
is,
hit me with that.
I started setting myself the challenge. Can I write on a schedule? Can I do this weekly? I hate expectations. I hate schedules. So I thought I'm just going to try. Could I do this every week? Write something. And also, the earthquakes on Twitter and social media, I thought maybe some other place where I can, collect some thoughts. And it started with exactly this. I set myself a timer, 60 minutes, write something down, boom, hit send. Sometimes didn't even read it twice. But then what happened after a while is you start thinking on Wednesday, I would start thinking, what am I going to write on Saturday or Sunday, whenever I write this? And I would have my notes and, notes file on my phone, just Apple Notes, and just jot down some ideas. And then you flash them out one day. And then you sit down Sunday morning and go, this is what I'm going to write about, and write this whole thing down. But the really interesting, change is you walk through life thinking, what can I write about? And that puts you in a state of noticing, and it puts you in a state of taking notes and kind of mulling stuff over in your head.
Yep.
And it's nice.
Yep. I like
Can
it.
be stressful. I'm still not sure what I'm going to write tomorrow on Sunday, but I'll take lying in bed thinking about what I'm going to write over a lot of other worrying. It's I don't know. Good
Yeah.
state of
It's like
mind.
why gratitude journals work. It's
Yes.
because if you know you're going to have to write down some things you're happy about, you are looking for those things.
Yes. Yeah,
And
exactly.
I love that. I've been making Twitter videos recently and really enjoying it.
Yeah.
And so I started a Twitter videos list, and I find it's helping me kind of catch things that are like, oh, I think this is interesting. I think this is
Yeah.
worth talking about. It's a thing I don't hear talked about very much, and I like that my brain has that process running. Actually,
Yeah,
I think it's kind
that's
of
what
like
I mean,
watching
yeah.
for interesting nuggets.
That's cool. That's how you should go through life.
I'm gonna put a very casual, low pressure pitch out to you of writing about this,
About the habit of writing.
like what having this thing does
Yeah.
to the way you think, and why you like it.
Will do. That's a good idea. I'll write this down.
Cool. Low pressure. I won't be sad if you don't write about this. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, man. This is a delight. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording. Bye.